In the spring of 1787, 55 delegates traveled to Philadelphia. Remember, delegates are chosen to speak for others or represent them. The delegates came from every state except Rhode Island. They met to discuss how to change the Articles of Confederation. Their meeting has become known as the Constitutional Convention. The delegates were landowners, business people, and lawyers. Most were wealthy and educated. Many had helped write their state's constitutions. They used some of the ideas about government from state constitutions as models for the national constitution. If a convention like this took place today, it would include Americans of many different backgrounds. In 1787, though, only white men who owned land were included. No women, African Americans, American Indians, or men who were not landowners took part in the convention. James Madison of Virginia arrived before the other delegates. He was a member of Congress. Madison wanted to do more than change the Articles of Confederation. He had a plan for a new system of government. During the convention, Madison took notes, and thanks to these notes, we know much of what people said and did at the Constitutional Convention. George Washington, the hero of the American Revolution, came as another Virginia delegate. Ringing bells and cheering crowds greeted him in Philadelphia. Ben Franklin, representing Pennsylvania, was respected for his wisdom. He had served the United States for many years. The delegates knew that the Articles of Confederation had to change. As one delegate is quoted as saying, "If we do not establish a good government, we must either go to ruin or have the work to do all over again." The Articles did not give Congress enough power. Some delegates, such as Madison and Washington, wanted a federal system. In a federal system, the states share power with the central government, but the central government has more power than the states. James Madison believed that a republic was the only type of government that could keep order and still protect rights. A republic is a government in which the citizens elect leaders to represent them. The power in a republic comes from the citizens themselves. The convention began on May 25th at the start of a very hot summer. The delegates elected George Washington as president of the convention. They also agreed to keep their debates secret. This allowed them to talk openly with each other without being influenced by people who were not a part of the convention. On May 29th, the governor of Virginia described Madison's plan for the new government. This plan, known as the Virginia Plan, called for a federal system in which the national government had 3 parts or branches. Many state constitutions had set up their governments this way, and most delegates agreed that this model worked. One branch would make the laws for the nation, another branch would carry out the law, and the third branch would settle legal arguments. The delegates accepted most of the Virginia plan, but many did not like one part of it. Madison had suggested that the number of each state's representatives in Congress be based on the state's population. Large states would get more votes in Congress than small states. The small states did not like this plan. It gave more power to large states. Delegates from the small states created the New Jersey Plan. Like the Articles of Confederation, This plan gave each state one vote, so the small states would have as much power as the large states. Delegates argued bitterly about these plans. Roger Sherman of Connecticut came up with a solution. He suggested dividing Congress into two parts or houses. Each state would have an equal number of representatives in one house, the Senate. The number of representatives each state sent to the other house, the House of Representatives, would depend on its population. Sherman's suggestion is called the Great Compromise. In a compromise, both sides give up something to settle a disagreement. The delegates accepted this compromise and moved on to other topics. Another problem delegates argued about was slavery. Southern delegates wanted slaves to count as part of the state's population. Counting enslaved people would have given their states more representatives in Congress. Other delegates said that was unfair because slaves were treated as property, not as citizens. Delegates also argued about whether to end the practice of bringing slaves into the United States. Delegates from the southern states said they would not accept the new government unless the slave trade continued. Arguments over slavery led to another compromise, the 3/5 rule. This rule counted 5 slaves as 3 free people. The slave trade was also allowed to continue until 1808. Although some delegates disliked this compromise and wanted to end slavery, they agreed to let it continue so that all states would support the Constitution. All through the hot, muggy summer of 1787, delegates worked on the new plan for government. They signed the final document, the Constitution of the United States of America, on September 17th, 1787. It was based on Madison's Virginia plan. Madison has been called the father of the Constitution. Before the Constitution could be used, at least 9 states had to ratify it. To ratify means to accept. In each state, representatives from the towns met to decide whether or not to ratify. Supporters of the Constitution, who were known as Federalists, faced a big challenge. Many people were shocked by the Constitution. They had expected changes to the Articles of Confederation, not an entirely new government. Federalists had to teach the public about the Constitution. Remember, a Federalist is someone who is a supporter of the Constitution. To do this, Madison and 2 other Federalists, Alexander Hamilton and John Jay, wrote a series of essays called The Federalist. These essays explained how the federal system would work and why the new nation needed it to succeed. They said that the United States needed a strong central government like the one that would be created by the Constitution. Not everyone wanted a federal system. People who opposed the new Constitution were called anti-federalists. They believed that a strong central government was a threat to liberty. They also thought the Constitution was dangerous because it had no Bill of Rights. A Bill of Rights is a list of the rights of individuals, such as freedom of speech and freedom of religion. James Madison and other Federalists promised to add a Bill of Rights. While Federalists and Anti-Federalists argued, state representatives met in their own conventions. Delaware was the first state to ratify the Constitution. In June 1788, New Hampshire became the 9th state to ratify. At that point, the Constitution became the country's law. In the end, all 13 states ratified. The United States had a new government.